One of America's more obscure yet terrifying murderers is Cleophus Prince Jr., a serial killer whose violent crimes haunted the city of San Diego in the early 1990s. Despite his relative obscurity compared to other infamous killers, Prince's acts were shockingly brutal and left a lasting scar on the lives of his victims and their families. Between 1990 and 1991, Prince, a former Navy sailor, claimed the lives of 6 women in a series of violent sexual assaults and murders, each more savage than the last. His killing spree was defined by the cold and calculated way in which he stalked and targeted his victims, all women living alone. Prince's killing spree began on January 12, 1990, with the murder of Tiffany Schultz, a 20-year-old fitness enthusiast and college student. Tiffany lived in a peaceful apartment complex, completely unaware that she was being stalked. One day, Prince broke into her home and stabbed her over 40 times. Tiffany's mutilated body was discovered by a neighbor, sending shockwaves through her community. Despite the horror, the murder was seen as an isolated event at first. No one suspected that a serial killer had just begun his deadly rampage. A few months later, Prince struck again. On September 13, 1990, he took the life of Janine Weinhold, a 21-year-old college student. Janine had only recently moved into her apartment, excited about her future. Like Tiffany, Janine was attacked in the middle of the day. She was stabbed multiple times in a frenzy of violence, her body left behind for a neighbor to discover. The similarities between the two murders began to raise alarm, though no solid leads emerged. On December 18, 1990, Prince murdered Holly Tarr, an 18-year-old dancer and recent high school graduate. Holly was full of potential, with dreams of a bright future ahead of her. Prince entered her apartment, overpowered her, and stabbed her repeatedly. This third murder confirmed the worst fears of investigators. A serial killer was targeting young women in their homes. Holly's friends and family were devastated, and the sense of unease in the city grew. By early 1991, Prince showed no signs of stopping. On February 16, 1991, he killed Pamela Clark, a 42-year-old mother of 2 who had recently divorced and was starting over. Pamela's brutal murder followed the same pattern as the previous killings. She was stabbed to death in her apartment, her body left behind in a scene of unimaginable violence. Pamela's death struck a nerve with the community, as her age and motherly status made the murder all the more shocking. Barely a month later, on March 29, 1991, Prince murdered Amber Clark, an 18-year-old high school student. Amber, who had just turned 18, was vibrant and full of life, excited for what her future held. Her dreams were violently shattered when Prince broke into her home, sexually assaulted her, and stabbed her to death. By now, it was clear that a dangerous predator was loose in the city, and women living alone were advised to be on high alert. Dara's murder ultimately led to Prince's capture. DNA evidence connected him to her killing, and when police arrested him, they realized they had finally caught the man responsible for a string of grisly murders. During his trial, Prince showed little remorse, maintaining his innocence despite overwhelming evidence. In 1993, he was convicted of 6 counts of murder and sentenced to death. The sheer randomness and violence of his attacks left a lasting impact on the city of San Diego. Prince didn't kill for revenge or out of personal vendettas. He killed because he could. His victims were chosen simply because they were vulnerable women living alone. Each of his victims had their own lives, dreams, and futures tragically stolen by a man whose motives remain a mystery. From Tiffany Schultz, the bright college student, to Dara Weinstein, the ambitious law student, each life lost was a devastating reminder of the human cost of violence. Cleophus Prince Jr. may not be as infamous as other serial killers, but the pain and fear he left behind will never be forgotten. His crimes stand as a grim reminder of the evil that can hide in plain sight, waiting to strike when least expected. His case stands as a chilling example of the evil that can hide behind an ordinary face.